Chapter 14: The Waters and Roads of Norway. "The white cliffs of Dover!" Ettore exclaims. He is staring across the crystalline waters of the English Channel. In the distance is a line of sheer, white chalk cliffs. To Sophia, these white cliffs of Dover resemble a row of well-cleaned teeth left by some giant of an ancient age. Sure, they have a ruggedly serene sort of beauty, but they don't compare to 1,000 natural landmarks she has seen in the States. Ettore views them differently. A childlike grin overtakes him as he muses. "I haven't seen them since I was a boy, when my parents took me to England on holiday. Of course, that was after the war." "What war?" asks Gabriel quizzically. "The Great War," Ettore clarifies. "It was the only time in my life I remember the world truly at peace. Except for now, I suppose." The Sea's All That and her passengers are on day 7 of their journey. After spending the previous night in the port town of Salcombe, they continued their trip eastward, between Great Britain and the north coast of France. After nearly a week of nothing but open water, Sophia is glad to see land again, especially land as beautiful as this. Dario believes they should reach Oslo, situated on the southern coast of Norway, sometime tomorrow. From there, they will drive north, through both Norway and Sweden. With any luck, they'll arrive at Promontorium Boreale, the North Cape, and the first piece of the Antikythera device within 3 days' time. "Well," says Kira, elbowing Sophia playfully, "do you plan to gawk at the landscape all day, or should we have a lesson?" Truthfully, Sophia would rather gawk, but because she doesn't want to disappoint Kira, she says, "We could do a lesson." As always, they head to the open area of the yacht's aft deck. As she warms up and stretches, Sophia casually scans the watery horizon behind the boat. There are seabirds floating on the breeze, scouting for shallow fish. High above, whiffs of white cloud decorate the sapphire sky. She freezes, squinting. Surely her eyes are playing a trick. Like a lone pencil mark on a piece of blue construction paper, a black speck intrudes upon the sea and sky behind them. She grabs Kira's arm and points to the dark spot. Kira tenses immediately, then yells, "Ettore! Micah! Everyone! Someone's following us!" In moments, the lazy yacht becomes a flurry of excitement as everyone rushes to join them on the stern. As soon as Ettore spots the pursuing ship, he says, "We must meet upstairs with Dario." A minute later, everyone is gathered in the wood-paneled steering room. "It has to be Lynn," Dario declares upon hearing the news. He spits the words hatefully and follows them with a curse. "I thought we had a bigger head start." "As did I," Ettore agrees. "So, what's that mean for us?" Micah asks. "Nothing," Dario replies. "We stick to the plan." Ettore gazes thoughtfully at the Spaniard. Sophia can see the gears and screws turning in the physicist's head as he considers the situation. "I think the plan must change," he announces. Dario frowns. He looks like he knew Ettore would say that. "Change to what?" Kyla asks, glancing around the room. "Go after a different relic instead?" "No," replies Ettore. "Not that." "He wants to keep sailing north," Dario explains, reading Ettore's mind. "The roads through Sweden are winding and forested. If there are downed trees blocking the road, we might lose hours trying to find a way around them. If we stick to the sea, Ettore knows we could save a lot of time. Potentially." "Potentially," says Kyla. "What do you mean?" "If the weather holds out, if we have favorable winds, if the seas aren't too rough," lists Dario. "We need many variables to go our way. The seas north of here can be very dangerous, even deadly." Sophia is surprised at Dario's intuition. Her first impressions of him were of a rash and reckless scoundrel. Now she is beginning to see that he can be both thoughtful and calculated. If Lynn notices us steering toward Oslo, she'll know she might gain an advantage by taking the sea, Ettere says ponderously. If she sees us sailing northward, she'll know she can't give up the chase. Either way, I believe she will travel by sea. If we want to be certain we're still ahead of her, it means we must do the same. Dario curses, then says, I know you're right, but it's risky. It will be the same risk she is taking, Ettere replies. It'll be a miracle if we don't all end up dead, Dario murmurs, deep in thought. Are we sure the risk is worth the reward? I will force no one to go any further than they want, Ettere says, glancing around at the rest of his crew. Say the word, and we will find the nearest port. You may go on your way. Everyone remains silent, though there are a few nervous glances from person to person. It's Micah who breaks the silence. We're with you, Eddie. I don't question your decisions. Dario shrugs and says, Then it seems like we're sailing north. I will spend some time with the maps and charts to find a good place for making landfall. Plus a few backups in case the sea and weather turn on us. Good, says Ettere before addressing the rest. We are fast approaching the location of the first relic. So is Lynn. If all goes well, we will beat her to the location, but not by much. Because Lynn has the Book of Relics, she holds a huge advantage over us, as you all know. This means we must use every other tool to our advantage so that we can find the relic as quickly as possible. And how are we supposed to do that? We don't even know what it looks like, Kyla exclaims with a touch of exasperation. The physicist snatches a yellow legal pad and pen from the short table next to him. Slowly he writes something on it. When he's finished, he says, It is true. We do not know what the relic looks like, nor do we have the book's clues to pinpoint its exact location when we arrive at the North Cape. Now is the time for me to share with you what I do know. He flips the yellow pad around so everyone can see it. Written on it are 10 letters. Some are familiar, but others look strange. It reads, Alpha, Nu, Tau, Iota, Kappa, Upsilon, Theta, Eta, Rho, Alpha. Anti-Ticu, what's it mean? Asks a perplexed Micah. They are the Greek letters which spell out the word Antikythera, Ettere answers. According to one of the books I found in the Vatican, the locations of the hallowed vaults are all marked with one of these letters. Find the letter, find the vault. Understand? And that's it? That's all we've got to help us find it? Kira asks. There's no mistaking her skepticism. More or less, yes, the Italian replies apologetically. I know it is not much, but unless we obtain the Book of Relics, or I find other clues in my books, this is all we have. Dario grunts his disapproval and mutters, All we have is nothing. Micah approaches the problem with his usual brand of dry humor. No problem, like trying to find a needle in a haystack, but with a blindfold on to make it harder. Yes, that is the game, Ettere admits. Please make sure your belongings are packed and ready to leave at a moment's notice. With Lynn so close behind us, we truly have no time to spare. The race is on, and we cannot lose. The crew disperses. Below decks in her luxurious stateroom, Sophia stuffs her blue hiking backpack full of clothes, toiletries, and other belongings. Then she returns to the deck, where Akira is waiting to begin their kickboxing training session. They're halfway through when Dario announces the plan to dock at a tiny village named Skarsvad. This will bring them as close to the North Cape as possible before they will be forced to drive. As he leaves, his grumbles reiterate that he thinks it's a long shot and that they'll all probably die trying to get there. By evening, the coastal mountains of southeast Norway stand majestic and proud on the starboard horizon. They glow bronze and orange as if the sinking sun has turned them into molten rock. Below the higher slopes, pine-forested islands and seaside hills create a skirt of deep green. Sophia thinks she can smell the rich earth and fragrant trees carried on the salty breeze. She wishes they had time to go ashore. How she would love to explore those forests and fjords and quaint seaside villages. Another day, she tells herself. For now they must keep ahead of the boat following them. Lin Lai won't stop to smell the pines. Neither can she. Sophia glances backward at the black smudge on the southern horizon, and a sense of uneasiness shivers down her spine. She could be wrong, but she thinks it's getting bigger. Night falls, and with it a million stars salt the sky. Everything else is inky blackness in the moonless world. For a short while, Sophia sits on the aft deck. Kira and Kyla keep her company, talking about the old world, their families and friends and homes. Eventually, the chill becomes too much for Sophia, and she crawls into her bed for what she knows might be her last comfortable sleep in a while. When she awakens hours later, the sea has changed. She feels the difference immediately. The up and down conveyor belt of the swells is more dramatic than before. Looking out the window, she sees it is still dark. She dresses hurriedly. Without leaving the warmth of the boat's insides, she climbs the spiral staircase into the steering room. She expected to find only Dario here. She is happy to learn that Ettore is with him. "Good morning," the Italian greets her warmly. His face is pale, his eyes sunken. His seasickness must be even worse than before. "What are you doing awake?" he asks. "Couldn't sleep," she answers. "Are the waves getting bigger, or is it just my imagination?" "Bigger and meaner," says Dario. His eyes are locked on the sea outside, and coming straight out of the north. It is then that Sophia notices the stars are gone. Clouds have erased them from the night sky. "We may have to cut our voyage short," Ettore informs her. "We will see whether or not this storm passes." It doesn't. As the black morning turns to a murky gray, the swells grow larger and the wind fiercer. Dario reassures the rest, telling them the yacht was built to handle this kind of rough weather. At the same time, he admits that if it becomes any worse, they'll have no choice but to go ashore. Early morning turns to late morning, and late morning into afternoon. The situation doesn't worsen, but it also doesn't improve. Gabriel soon joins Bixby and Ettore in the Seasick Club, and Kira finds her hands full caring for both dog and boy. By mid-afternoon, each has vomited at least a half-dozen times. Around 4 o'clock, the strong headwind becomes an all-out gale. Dario and Ettore, who haven't left the steering room once, decide to make for the port town of Narvik, a village nestled east of them at the crook of a deep bay. To the north, a crescent-shaped set of islands gives them some cover from the winds, and before long the swells shrink to half their former size. Icy rain is spattering the yacht when Dario maneuvers it into Narvik's harbor. Although no one has seen Lynn's boat since nightfall, the company wastes no time finding a pair of vehicles. The 3 men select a black Volvo, while the twins pile into a tiny blue Skoda with Sophia, Gabriel, and Bixby. Within minutes, the 2-car caravan begins its long journey northeast toward the roof of Europe. And the relic awaiting them there. With Bixby's warm head against her stomach, Sophia immediately falls asleep in the back seat. Darkness has fallen by the time she awakens. She realizes they must have stopped at least once, because Kira has replaced Kyla as their driver. Rain soaks the windshield, and the years-old wipers are doing a terrible job clearing it away. Wind buffets the car, causing it to shiver and shake. Ahead, winding through the mountainous terrain, are the Volvo's red taillights. "How long do we have to drive?" the girl asks wearily. The voice startles Kira, and she jumps in her seat. Realizing it was the newly awakened Sophia who asked the question, she rubs her bleary eyes and replies, "Not sure. It's hard to tell. These roads wind in and out of dozens of fjords along the seacoast. Plus, this weather isn't helping. So, half a day? Maybe more? A spider web of lightning rips open the sky. The tremendous peal of accompanying thunder awakens Bixby, and the boxer mutt looks up at Sophia for reassurance. She responds by pulling his head close to her stomach. This comforts the dog, and he closes his eyes again. On and on through the wild night they drive. When both vehicles are low on gas, they stop in a tiny seaside town and trade for two different ones. After a quick look at an atlas stolen from the Volvo, Dario determines they are less than halfway to the North Cape. The news is disheartening for everyone but Ettore, whose eyes remain lit with a fierce gleam of determination. "We must still be ahead of Lynn," he says. "This weather will have slowed her progress, too." Dawn is breaking when they stop to swap vehicles again. Now they are in Alta, which seems a bit larger than the other towns they've passed. They luck out at a gas station, finding two vehicles whose tanks had been filled moments before their owners disappeared forever. When they switch cars, the wind is so violent and the rain so torrential that after only a few seconds outside, everyone is drenched. Sophia wishes with all her heart she would have grabbed some dry clothes to change into, especially after learning the new car's heater is broken. Past Alta, the road finally breaks free of the winding seacoast, and they travel up into higher country. At first, Sophia is happy for the change. The brightening daylight, however, reveals the true terror of the storm. Many of the small scrubby plants carpeting the high heath are being ripped up by the roots and flung across the roadway. Whenever they pass below any hill, Sophia cringes as the gale hurls sand and pebbles against her window. With a white-knuckled grip, Kira locks both hands onto the steering wheel. Sitting in the passenger seat, Kyla clutches her armrests for dear life. Sophia is glad when they descend toward the coast again, but only for a moment. Then she realizes that if the car loses the road here, it will mean plummeting 100 feet down jagged rocks into the frigid waters of the Arctic Ocean below. She gulps and hopes Ettore, driving the car ahead of them, will slow down some. They at last receive a break from the weather when they enter a cavernous tunnel. For a long time they travel downhill, until Sophia is quite certain they are, in fact, beneath the sea itself. A few miles later, the road turns upward again. Just before arriving at the tunnel's exit, the men's red Audi screeches to a halt. Micah jumps out and jogs toward them. Kira stops too. She rolls down her window and asks, "What's going on? Everything all right?" "Fine," Micah replies, his voice echoing around the cavern walls. "When we get out of the tunnel, keep driving a little way, and then pull over." Dario, God bless him, might have had the best idea of his life. "What is it?" Kira inquires suspiciously. "You'll see," Micah calls over his shoulder as he hustles back to the Audi. Though she doesn't know the plan, Kira does as asked. Outside the tunnel, again within the jaws of the savage storm, she pulls to the side of the road. Without a care for the deluge, she rolls down her window and looks back to learn what kind of scheme the men have concocted. For a few minutes, the Audi remains parked at the tunnel's mouth. Then Dario hops out. Carrying a bulky backpack around his shoulders, he hurries into the tunnel and is swallowed up by its darkness. 1 minute passes, then 2. Still, Dario does not return. Finally, around the 4-minute mark, he reemerges, running at a full sprint. Sophia realizes he is no longer carrying the backpack. Dario dives into the car. Ettore speeds forward, driving like someone fleeing a horde of savage monsters. Then the ground beneath them shudders, and Sophia wonders if they have been caught in an earthquake. A tremendous roar bellows forth from the mouth of the cave, followed by a rush of dust and stone, as the tunnel vomits up its insides. The tremors stop as quickly as they started. The rain and ripping winds are again the only sounds Sophia hears. It takes a moment for her to realize what has happened. When she does, she can't keep herself from laughing. Ettore stops his car beside theirs. Dario, sitting in the passenger seat, rolls down his window. His face beams with a wickedly satisfied grin as he says, "I've always wanted to blow something up. Let's see Lynn follow us through that."